My grandmother used to tell me that some doors are locked for a good reason, and some for no reason at all. She just never told me which kind hers was. I found out 3 weeks after her funeral, standing in the attic of the house she'd lived in for 61 years, holding a cedar hope chest with a tin box inside it that no key in that house would open. I didn't know yet that the box held a birth certificate with a name on it that, according to my own family, did not exist. I didn't know that opening it would mean standing up at my grandmother's will reading in front of 11 relatives and telling my Aunt Corinne that I had proof of exactly what she'd spent 40 years burying. My aunt thought the past was settled the day it happened. She was about to learn that in my family, the person who kept every old record for a living was sitting 3 feet away from her the whole time, and I don't forget what's written down. This is Adele's Hidden Tales, where the quiet ones finally speak, and the truth outlasts everyone who tried to bury it. If you love stories about family, inheritance, and the exact moment a hidden name comes back into the light, you're exactly where you belong. But before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. My name is Louise Marsh, and for 18 years, I've worked in the Vital Records Office of Haddon County, Georgia. Birth certificates, death certificates, adoption filings, the paperwork that says who a person legally is. My grandmother Nell was the last of her generation, and when she passed at 89, our family gathered at the old homestead outside town for the will reading, the way we'd gathered for every holiday of my childhood. My Aunt Corinne, my late father's older sister, had run that family for decades, with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. And there was Faye, my cousin, or so I'd been told my whole life, a woman 4 years older than me, who'd grown up 2 counties over, raised by a family friend, and who showed up to every reunion like a guest who'd forgotten she had a key. 3 questions sat in that attic with me before anyone else knew what I'd found. Why had my grandmother kept a locked tin box separate from everything else she owned? Why did my aunt go pale, actually pale, the one time as a teenager I'd asked why Faye didn't live with her own parents? And whose name was going to be on the paper inside that box? Because some part of me, the part that reads records for a living, already suspected it wasn't going to be a stranger's. I should tell you who was in that house before I tell you what I found, because you'll want to know exactly who was standing in the room when it all came apart. My grandmother, Nell Whitfield, raised 4 children alone after my grandfather died young, on a tobacco allotment that barely fed them some years. She was the kind of woman who mended clothes rather than replaced them, who remembered every birthday down to the hour, and who said very little unless it mattered, which is exactly why the one sentence she gave me about that cedar chest stuck with me for 30 years. My father, her youngest, passed when I was in my 20s, which left my Aunt Corinne as the oldest living Whitfield and, by her own quiet insistence, the keeper of the family's business. Corinne was 68 now, a widow herself, sharp as a tack and twice as careful with what she let people see. She'd spent decades managing the family's small trust, some land, some savings, the homestead itself, and nobody questioned her, because questioning Corinne felt like questioning the ground you stood on. Then there was Faye. Faye Prentice, 30 years my calendar cousin, though I'd never once seen a birth record with her name on it in all my years working in that office. And believe me, I'd looked, quietly, more than once, and told myself it was nothing. Faye grew up with the Prentice family, longtime friends of ours, 2 counties over, and came to every Thanksgiving and every funeral like family does. She called my grandmother Aunt Nell, never Grandma, a small detail nobody but a records clerk would think twice about. My own household was steadier ground. I'd married Marcus 9 years earlier, an estate appraiser by trade, a man who spends his days figuring out what an object is actually worth versus what a family has always claimed it's worth. On our second date, he told me that objects don't lie, but the stories families tell about objects almost always do. I laughed then. I think about that sentence every day now. Marcus was quiet in the way that made people underestimate him, methodical, the sort of man who'd rather verify a thing 3 times than argue about it once. When my grandmother passed, it was Marcus who drove me out to the homestead the week before the will reading to help catalog her belongings for the estate, which is how I ended up alone in that attic with a cedar chest I hadn't opened since I was 9 years old, hearing my grandmother's voice in my head, the way you do when someone's only been gone a few weeks. The chest holds more than lace, Louise. Some doors are locked for good reason, and some for no reason at all. I hadn't understood it as a girl, I told myself, standing there with dust on my hands, that I was finally about to. The cedar chest was exactly where I remembered it, tucked under the eaves beside a stack of quilts, gone soft with age. I lifted the lid, expecting lace and linens, and found both, folded the way my grandmother folded everything, with a corner tucked under like a hospital bed. But underneath the linens, wrapped in a pillowcase, was a tin box the size of a shoebox, sealed with a small brass padlock that didn't match a single key on the ring the lawyer had given me. I sat back on my heels and felt that specific, cold curiosity that comes from 18 years of handling other people's secrets for a living. A locked box inside a locked chest, inside a house that was about to be divided among relatives who hadn't agreed on anything in years. That is not nothing. That is somebody protecting information from somebody else. I texted Marcus a photo of the box. He wrote back in under a minute. That's a keepsake lock, common in the 50s and 60s. Small key, easy to lose, easy to hide. Check inside anything hollow. Books, frames, the Bible if there is one. I found the Bible on the nightstand in my grandmother's room and taped flat against the inside back cover, behind the family tree page where generations of Whitfields had been written in fading ink, was a small brass key. My hands were not steady when I carried that key back up to the attic. I want you to understand that I was not looking for trouble. I was looking for a box of old letters, maybe a ring, the kind of sentimental nothing every family has stashed somewhere. What I found instead, folded in a manila envelope, gone brittle at the folds, was a birth certificate, not one from any file I'd ever pulled at work. A hospital in the next county over, a date 30 years back, a mother's name I recognized instantly because it was my Aunt Corinne's, unmarried at the time, and a baby girl's name that was not Faye Prentice. It was a name I'd never heard spoken once in 30 years of family dinners. Beneath it, in my grandmother's handwriting, a single folded note. I could not let Corinne lose everything over one mistake, and I could not let the child grow up knowing she'd been the reason. I am the only one who kept the truth whole. Someone should have it when I'm gone. Nell. I sat on the attic floor with that envelope in my lap for a long time, because the shape of 30 years of small, strange silences was suddenly rearranging itself in front of me, and none of the new shape was comfortable. Faye was not the Prentice family's ward, taken in as a favor to old friends. Faye was my Aunt Corinne's daughter, born before Corinne's marriage, handed to trusted friends to raise so the scandal would die quietly instead of following Corinne through the rest of her life in a small Georgia county where everyone remembered everything. And whatever had been settled about the family trust in all the years since had been settled without anyone ever accounting for the fact that a Whitfield had been sitting at our table her entire life without a Whitfield's name or a Whitfield's share. I called Marcus that night and read him the note twice. He was quiet for a long moment. "Louise," he finally said, "this isn't a family secret anymore. It's a legal question. If Faye is Corinne's biological child, and nobody's ever formally acknowledged that, then whatever's about to happen at that will reading might be built on a foundation that isn't accurate. You need to think hard about what you do with this before Saturday. I told him I didn't know yet. That was true for exactly 4 more days. I did what 18 years in a records office teaches you to do when you find something that could upend a family. I didn't accuse anyone. I verified. The morning after the attic, I drove to the county archive on my day off, the same building where I've spent half my adult life, and pulled the original filing index for the hospital and year on that birth certificate. It matched. Not a forgery, not a prank, an actual sealed record that had simply never been cross-referenced against our family's public story, because nobody but a records clerk would ever think to check. I found something else while I was there, something that turned a private family sorrow into a much colder question. 11 years ago, when my grandfather's original trust was restructured after my grandfather's brother passed, the filed beneficiary schedule listed 4 Whitfield grandchildren by name. Faye Prentice was not among them, listed instead as a family friend entitled to a token gift, $5,000, nothing more. If Faye was in fact Corinne's daughter, and Corinne had signed off on that schedule herself as the family's representative to the attorney, then my aunt had used her own authority over the family's affairs to formally write her own child out of an inheritance a Whitfield grandchild would otherwise have been entitled to, in order to keep the secret of Faye's parentage from ever surfacing in a legal document anyone might read. I sat in my car in the courthouse parking lot for a long time with that thought. I decided I needed to see Faye before I did anything else, because whatever my aunt had done, Faye herself had spent 30 years being quietly, systematically cut out of her own family, and she deserved to hear it from someone who wasn't about to spin it for their own comfort. I found her on a Tuesday afternoon at the diner she managed outside Millbrook, wiping down a counter that didn't need it, the way people do when their hands need something to do. She looked glad to see me, then wary, the way people get when a records clerk cousin corners you, and clearly did not stop by for pie. "Faye," I said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to know I'm not trying to hurt anyone by asking it." She set down the rag. "You found something in that house," she said. It wasn't a question. Everybody in that family's been hiding something my whole life, Louise. I stopped asking a long time ago. I told her what the birth certificate said. I watched 30 years of quiet, unexplained distance rearrange itself on her face, the same way it had on mine in that attic. She didn't cry right away. She laughed once, short and disbelieving, the laugh of someone whose whole childhood just got a footnote added to it that changes the entire chapter. "She used to send birthday cards," Faye said finally, very quiet, "every year, signed Aunt Corinne. I used to think it was sweet that she remembered, when nobody else in that family half the time did." Then she said the thing that told me exactly how far this had reached. 10 years ago, I asked for a small loan to open this place. Aunt Corinne said the family trust couldn't help family friends. Only blood. I remember exactly how she said it. Only blood, Louise. She looked me in the eye and said that. I drove home that evening and told Marcus everything Faye had said. He was quiet for a long time in the way he gets when he's already 3 steps down a road I haven't started walking yet. "You understand what this means for Saturday," he said. "If the trust documents were filed the way you're describing, cutting a legal beneficiary out based on a fact her own mother concealed from the attorney, there may be grounds to challenge the whole schedule. That's not a family quarrel anymore, Louise. That's a paper trail, and you're the one person in this family who actually knows how to read one." I called the attorney handling my grandmother's estate the next morning, not to accuse anyone, only to ask a narrow, careful question about beneficiary documentation and biological versus adoptive relationships in Georgia trust law. What he told me confirmed the shape of what I already feared. If Faye's parentage had never been formally disclosed to the attorney managing the original trust, and Corinne had signed the schedule representing full and accurate family information, that schedule could very plausibly be challenged in probate court, which meant that whatever Corinne planned to say at Saturday's will reading, she already knew, better than anyone in that room, exactly how much weight one buried document could carry. Saturday came clear and warm, the kind of Georgia spring afternoon that makes the old homestead look exactly like the postcard version of itself. White porch, pecan trees, family cars parked crooked in the grass, the way they always had been. 11 of us gathered in the front parlor where my grandmother had hosted every Christmas of my childhood. The attorney at the head of the table with his folder, Corinne seated to his right, in a navy dress with her hands folded, the way she'd folded them at every family function I could remember. Composed, unreachable, in charge. Faye sat near the back, near the door, the way she always had, close enough to belong, far enough to leave quickly. I sat with Marcus, the manila envelope in my bag, and I did not reach for it yet. I wanted to see what my aunt would do first, because I already understood something about her that took me 30 years to learn. Corinne did not lie by accident. She managed information the way she managed everything else, carefully, in advance, for her own protection. The attorney read through the small bequests first, a clock to one cousin, a set of china to another, the routine business of an estate. Then he reached the section concerning the homestead and the remaining trust, and Corinne, without waiting to be asked, spoke first, the way she always did, the way she'd clearly planned to. "Before you go further," she said, her voice smooth and practiced, "I think it's only fair to remind everyone that this family has always taken care of its own, and that some of the people in this room aren't blood, however close we hold them. I'd hate for there to be any confusion later about who this estate is rightfully meant for." She did not look at Faye when she said it. She didn't need to. Everyone in that room understood exactly who she meant, and I watched Faye go very still near the door, the old, practiced stillness of someone absorbing a small cruelty in public for the 100th time, and simply enduring it, because enduring it was the only script she'd ever been handed. I felt something in my chest go quiet and cold, and very, very clear. My aunt was doing precisely what I'd suspected she would do, getting ahead of a truth she didn't yet know I possessed, drawing the boundary lines of family loyalty in a way designed to make sure Faye never questioned her exclusion out loud. I set my hand on Marcus's knee under the table. He gave the smallest nod. I stood up. "Aunt Corinne," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I felt. "I think we should be honest about whose blood in this family before anyone signs anything else today." The room's easy, funeral hush chatter went dead silent. Corinne's composure didn't crack, not yet. She was too practiced for that. But something behind her eyes went very still and very alert, the look of a woman recalculating in real time. "I don't know what you mean, Louise," she said. "I think you do," I said, and I set the envelope on the table between us. I found Grandma's tin box in the attic. She kept the original hospital birth record inside it, the one that was filed 30 years ago, under your name, for a baby girl who is sitting in this room right now. The silence that followed was the kind you could hear the pecan trees moving in through the open windows. I opened the envelope and laid the birth certificate on the table, and beside it, the copy of the original trust beneficiary schedule I'd pulled from the county archive, and I let both documents sit there in plain black ink for everyone to read for themselves, because I had learned, the hard way, that a truth you can hand someone to verify lands differently than a truth you only speak out loud. "Faye is not a family friend," I said quietly. "She's your daughter. Grandma knew it, kept the proof, and left a note asking that whoever found it make sure the truth didn't die with her. And 11 years ago, when this family's trust was restructured, you signed a schedule listing your own daughter as a family friend, entitled to $5,000. instead of a grandchild entitled to a fourth of everything the rest of us stand to inherit today. Faye had gone white near the door. My cousin Thomas reached for the papers with shaking hands and began to read, and I watched the same recalibration cross every face in that room that had crossed mine in the attic 3 weeks earlier. My Aunt Corinne did not scream. That would have been easier, in a way, easier to forgive later, easier to explain to yourself as a person breaking under pressure. Instead, she went very quiet and very small, in a way I had never once seen her go small in 50-some years of family gatherings. "You don't understand what it was like," she said finally, and her voice had lost every trace of its practiced smoothness. "I was 22, unmarried, in this town, in that decade. My father would have..." She stopped herself. Mother helped me place her with the Prentices because they were kind, and because I convinced myself it was better for everyone, that I was protecting her from the shame of it as much as protecting myself. And then years went by, and it got easier to let it stay quiet than to ever say it out loud. And every year that passed made the silence feel more permanent until it wasn't a decision anymore. It was just how things were. I understood the fear in that, the way I'd understood a version of it once before, in someone else's kitchen, a young woman doing frightened math in a decade that would have punished her for the truth. What I could not make myself excuse was the schedule she'd signed 11 years ago, as a grown woman with every choice available to her, cutting her own daughter out of a fair share of the family's trust to keep a decades-old secret buried a little longer. Fear explained 1996. It did not explain the paperwork she'd signed just 11 years back. Faye stood up from her chair near the door, and every eye in that room swung to her the way they'd swung to Corinne a moment before. 30 years, Faye said, and her voice shook but did not break. "I sent this family Christmas cards. I showed up to every funeral. I asked you for a loan once, for my diner, and you told me the trust was only for blood." She looked at Corinne for a long moment. "I was blood the whole time. You just decided I wasn't worth the truth." Corinne had no answer for that. There wasn't one. The attorney, to his credit, cleared his throat gently and said that given what had just come to light, the beneficiary schedule would need to be reviewed by the court before any further distribution could proceed. That this was now, as he put it, a matter for probate rather than a family parlor. Nobody argued. Nobody could. Over the following months, with the documents Marcus and I had gathered laid out plainly for the court, the schedule was formally amended. Faye was recognized as a Whitfield grandchild and received her rightful share of the homestead and trust, the share that should have been hers for the past 11 years. Corinne did not contest it. I think, in the end, some small part of her was almost relieved to stop carrying a lock she'd held onto for 30 years, even if it cost her the family's good opinion to finally set it down. As for me, I didn't come out of that attic looking for a fight, and I didn't walk into that will reading wanting to be the one who broke my family open in front of everyone. But I have spent 18 years of my working life believing that a record exists so the truth has somewhere safe to live when everyone around it would rather it disappeared. My grandmother believed that too, in her own quiet way, tucking one honest page inside a locked box rather than destroying it, trusting that someone in her family would eventually be the kind of person who'd read it instead of burning it. I think about her sentence often now. Some doors are locked for good reason, and some for no reason at all. I understand now that she wasn't warning me away from that chest. She was leaving me the key. I still think about the look on Faye's face in that parlor. 30 years of quiet distance finally making sense to her all at once. And I think about my grandmother, alone in that house for years, carrying the one honest page nobody else wanted to keep. If your family has ever buried the truth to protect one person's comfort at another person's expense. I'd like to hear how it finally came out, or whether it hasn't yet. Tell me in the comments what you think my grandmother should have done with that box the day she first found it, kept it hidden forever, or told the truth while she still could. And if a story like this one, about the records families keep and the ones they try to erase, is the kind of thing you come back for, stick around, because next week I'm telling you about a woman who found her late husband's second set of tax returns in a shoebox in his workshop, and what they revealed about the life he'd been quietly living 40 minutes down the highway. Come back for that one, and if you haven't already, go ahead and join us here so you don't miss it. It means more than you know.